True. Nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I'm mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale, blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point you fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me, you should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him, and every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it. Oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern. All closed so that no light shone out. And then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously, cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber, and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name, in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before, that night, had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph, to think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with a thick darkness, for the shutters were close fastened, through fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. Steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still, and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He he was still sitting up in bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or grief, oh no. It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo. The terrors that distracted me, I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It's nothing but the wind in the chimney. It's only a movement crossing the floor." Or, "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him, and enveloped the victim, and it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he never saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You could not imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple, dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot from out the crevice, and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now, I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous. So I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still, but the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber, and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own, in a dream. The old man, I mentioned, was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought the chairs into the room, and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long I felt myself getting pale, and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat, and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued, and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I grew very pale, but I talked more fluently, and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles, in a high key and with violent gesticulations. But the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore, I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting, and I grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose over all, and continually increased. It grew louder, louder, and still the men chatted pleasantly. I smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, no! They heard! They suspected! They knew! They were making a mockery of my horror! This I thought, and this I think, but anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear the hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark! Louder! 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 Villains! I shrieked. Disassemble no more! I admit the deed! Tear the planks! Here! Here! It is the beating of his hideous heart! Heart, 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 heart.
I would really love to see everybody participating in the chat and giving feedback on different things. And so um, that's kind of what I'll be looking for. But I also really expect that everybody will be able to give their poll response too. So um, let's go ahead and read this one. It says, which of the following does Poe establish about the narrator with the opening sentence? True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? So it's basically asking what what is Poe, the author, trying to establish here? What's he trying to show? All right. So A, the narrator is not insane, but he believes that he is. B, the narrator is not usually nervous. C, the narrator believes that he is not insane, but he probably is. Or D, the narrator is angry with the reader. So you can give me a poll response if you'd like. I'd also like to get some participation from you guys explaining what answer you chose, or you can explain why you know one of those answers is definitely not right. So you can choose one or the other, but I'd like to hear from a couple of you just so we can make sure we all get our participation points. All right, Frederica says mark off D. Let me hear a reason though. I don't have a reason. If you can explain why you think D is definitely wrong, let me know. So Meredith makes a good point. She's really referencing the rest of the story though. So if you read the story closely and it looks like Meredith did, then she's got a pretty good reason for that. Just keep in mind that they are asking specifically though about this part in white. So how does he establish what you're thinking with that sentence alone? Okay, I really like what you guys are saying. So then Nevin comes in and says that he thinks that he's so cunning and that he's so smart, so he can't be insane, right? Again, that's really referencing the rest of the story, but true. I like the way that you're thinking there. Okay, Hiram says he can't be mad about the or mad at the reader because it's the man's eye that makes him nervous, right? Yes, exactly. Good. That's a good reason to mark off D. So I'm gonna mark off D. Okay. And it's because the story shows how calm the narrator was. Okay, so maybe he's not so nervous that we're thinking, so we could probably mark off C. Okay, so then now we're stuck with A or C. Okay, so I'm gonna share that get your poll in. I think I have a couple of you guys that still don't have a poll response chosen. So choose A, B, C, or D, and then I'm gonna share out, and we'll look at that. All right, check out the poll responses. Whoops, drew a line instead. Okay, We had one person say B, but then several of us said C. So you guys can make your decision on which answer you think is the better one. Whether it's about the narrator not being insane, but he thinks he is, or he believes he's not crazy or not insane, but he probably is. Okay? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, good, Patricia. Thank you for jumping in there at the end. All right, let's look at the next question. It says, what reason does the narrator give for wanting to kill the old man? Ooh, we've already had someone answer this one in their explanation of their other answer. So, what do you say? All right. We almost have 100% of you guys with a response. So, is it that, what's his reasoning? Is it that he hates the old man? Is it that he wants the old man's gold? Is it that the old man has insulted him in some way, or the old man has a clouded eye? Meredith says that he said in the story that his eye was evil multiple times. It's true, I do remember that. Nevin, Patricia, if you guys will give me a poll response, then we'll be able to share that out and then move along. Okay. Okay, I don't think you guys are having a hard time with this one. I do believe that that one's a really easy question that we can go and prove from the text pretty quickly. So you guys are doing great there. Awesome. Well, that was an easy one. Good. Okay, the old man never said anything to him, and he doesn't want his gold. Good. It actually says directly that he's not after his money or anything, right? Nice. You guys can find text evidence pretty quickly. That's great. Okay, so let's look at the next question. I still haven't heard from a handful of you in either the chat or the whiteboard. Oh, y'all don't even have whiteboard, do you? So make sure that you're getting your participation points. We're going through these pretty quick. Which of the following is most likely the source of the sound the narrator identifies as the old man's heartbeat? Okay, this one's a little bit what I would call intuitive. All right, you've got to really know what's going on without it actually saying it outright. Okay. So, do you think the actual source of that sound, of that heartbeat that he was referring to, was a watch wrapped in cotton? Was it the actual old man's heartbeat? Was it just the narrator's imagination, or do you think he was hearing his own heartbeat? What do you say? And then tell me why. All right. Meredith is has a really good point. It could not have been the old man's heart beating, right? Because he was dead. There was no way that that was the actual noise. So I'm going to mark that one out. Okay. So we're moving away from B for sure. Okay, exactly, Hiram. He checked his pulse and it was gone. So, and a pulse is an indicator of a heartbeat. Okay, so one thing I want to lead you guys towards too, though, is think about what happens when you feel guilty about something, or if you have a secret and other people around you don't know it, but you like are bursting at the seams. What physically happens to your body? What happens in your body? What goes crazy? Yeah, so your stomach gets really fuzzy. You might start feeling sick, right? You're like, oh, this is awful. But also, your heart starts to beat really fast. Have you guys ever heard the expression that you can hear your heartbeat in your ears? Like the thumping in your ears? And it's almost like really like overwhelming, right? So a crazy person who just murdered someone and put them into the floor of their house might feel a little bit guilty when there are two police officers sitting in that very room right over the dead body. And so, since he had already personified or given like human like qualities to the eye of this old man, like the old man had an evil eye, but which an eye can't really be evil in the real world, right? So that's personification. He's giving human-like qualities to an object that can't really do those things. So do you think that that might be possible that if he actually is hearing a heartbeat, that he might do the same thing with that old man's heart? So think about that, okay? Just want to point you in that direction, because we know that it was just a simile with the watch wrapped in cotton. He said it was like a watch wrapped in cotton. Okay, you can still hear it, but you can't really tell where it's coming from. That was the whole point of that simile. When you wrap something in cotton, it disguises the exact direction where it's coming from. And so that gives us an idea that there is a heart beating somewhere, but it's probably not coming from beneath the slats in the floor. Okay, give me a smiley face or a thumbs up if that makes sense to you guys. Okay. And maybe some of y'all are thinking, none of this makes sense. This guy is nuts and crazy. And that's okay. I also think he's nuts and crazy. But hopefully that helps you on this particular question. Let me share out the poll response just so you guys can get an idea. So we're a little bit split. Some of us say C, some of us say D. It is one of those. Those are the two top answers, but one is a little bit more on point than the other. Okay? So keep that in mind. Okay, we are zooming through these questions. Why does the narrator confess his crime? Why does he do this? Is it because the police accuse him of the crime? So did the police walk in and say, you did this crime? And then he said, yeah, you're right. Or did he think that the police were able to hear the heartbeat that he hears? Was it that he wanted to explain to the police how he did it? He was like really proud of himself and he went into the details. Or was it that he thinks the old man wants him to confess? Which one of those could you really back up? And then if you feel confident that you know at least one of them isn't right, then tell me that one too. All right, Meredith says, duh, no, the police never accused him of the crime. They came to check it out, right? So they were a little suspicious at first. But he does explain that he cleaned up so well and he hit it so well that they had no idea. They even just sat down and were like talking to him about it, like, man, this is so weird. I wonder if there really was a crime around here. So, no, the police were not looking at him and saying, you did this. They weren't accusing him of that. They were just checking into the report of a screen. Okay, good. What else do you guys have? All right. Good. I like what you guys are saying. I'm still waiting on Caitlin and Frederica. If you guys will jump in there with some of your comments, if you have anything to add. You can also write on the whiteboard if you'd like to. But you guys still need to earn your participation credits. Everyone else, you guys are doing a great job. I love reading what y'all are saying. Keep it up. Nice. Nevin, good explanation. They must hear that heartbeat, right? Because they're sitting right over him and there's the old man's heartbeat. That's what this crazy guy is saying. Also, he's so guilty that when they laugh, you're exactly right, Nevin. He thought that they were mocking or teasing him because they could hear it too. Hiram, I like what you've said. The police could definitely hear the heartbeat, right? That's what he thinks. So he comes clean because he's like, oh well, they already know anyway. Okay, fine, I'll just tell you. So, Meredith, I really like yours too, just talking about how it's all about the heartbeat. He just keeps talking about this heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. And so that would be a good reason for the answer that you chose. I think that's great. All right. Let me show you the poll responses. There you go. Drawing a line on it again. Okay. So 7 of us are with B, and somebody out there is saying, I don't know, I think I'm going to go with D, and that's okay. You can choose what you think. Oh, look, Frederica. Okay, good. I think B because the narrator's logic would tell him that if he heard the heartbeat, that maybe the police would. Yeah. If I could hear a heartbeat in the room, I would assume that someone else could hear it too, except that the fact was it was that heartbeat in his own ears, right? So, definitely. Okay, good. Thanks, Frederica. I like how you jumped in there at the very end. Okay, Caitlin, if you want to get your participation point here so you can retake that quiz after we're done today, this is your last opportunity. Everybody else, you guys are doing great. Okay, which of the following best describes the climax of the story? This one's tricky, y'all. It is. It really is. So be careful. Let's read through our options. I want you guys to think of the climax as the most exciting. Okay, the most exciting part of the story. Just keep in mind that this story doesn't have very much of a falling action and resolution. It just kind of all leads up to this big climax thing. Okay, so let's read our options. Which one describes the climax? The narrator is discovered to be mad. And remember, the word mad actually means crazy. Okay, so in this situation, the mad that we're talking about is crazy. Or B, the narrator decides to kill the old man. C, the narrator confesses to his crime, or D, the narrator hears what he thinks is the beating of the old man's heart. So which of these is the most exciting part of the story? And then tell me why. All right, so Nevin is suggesting B because he feels like killing the old man is going to solve his problems. So that's a great way, that's a great opener for discussion, Nevin, because does killing the man solve his problem? Does it make him not crazy anymore? Because that's what his problem was, right? He was acting crazy. And he just felt like it was the evil eye that was making him stay up at night and be crazy and do crazy things. But did it resolve it? I'm not so sure. I'm not so convinced that it did. So here's the catch. When we're looking for a climax, we are truly looking for the most exciting thing that ends up being kind of part of that resolution. So the climax is where the problem gets to the most intense point, and then right after is when it just all kind of falls apart after that. Or it basically just falls back into, I don't know, calm or whatever. I'm not really sure there's a whole lot of calm in this story, but the climax is where, like, the craziest part, like, everything leads up to that happening. Right. Okay. So, I like you guys kind of telling me what your struggle might be, um, and and I want to help you. I don't think I said this at the beginning, but I can't give you the answer outright. Okay. So I can't say the answer is J or whatever. Um, so I just want to talk through some parts of it, and um, A climax in the story, typically, if you look at a plot line, happens kind of towards the end, but not right at the end. But this story is a little bit different. There's a lot of controversy as to which part of the story is actually the real climax. You would think that it was when he killed the old man, because that's like what he talks about the whole beginning of the story, but he actually kills him pretty early on in the story, right? He tells how he kind of stalks him at night, and then he finally kills him. He chops him up into little like parts and then stores them away, but then we still have more stuff going on. There's still a problem. Someone heard the scream. Someone called the police. Someone asked the police to come over and investigate. The police get there and they investigate. But I'm not really. I want you guys to kind of think about which part you think is the real climax. So I can't give it to you, but it's a little bit tricky. It's a little bit different than usual. Yeah, Nevin, that story really was a little bit freaky, especially the latest link that I found for YouTube for that reading. The music was like, oh my gosh, so freaky. Okay, so that's that. I don't think there's anything else I could say to help you guys with this one, unless anybody else wants to explain their own answer. I'm gonna publish the new responses. Still have 5 on B. We had a couple change over to C and then 1 on D. So um, that's the best I can do for you on that one. So at this point, if you will please move yourself to the room that of the teacher that you belong to.